So you're finally thinking about buying that 911 in 2023, or perhaps you already own one. In both cases, it's crucial to understand the depreciation trends. There are currently major differences between the different generations. Some lost up to 15% during last year, while others lost nothing. In this video, we'll dissect the state of the market, the current depreciation trends, and the future ones. Let's start with an overview of the current market. Over here we have the US market in May. There are 1,009 clean titles listed for sale, and this is 24% less than 3 months ago. Supply is decreasing, and we are seeing this across the board. Used car supply is tightening. Now looking at the prices, we can see that you can already get a 911 at $25,000. Yes, it's a high mileage 996.1 or .2, but still, it is a 911. From that point onwards, things get quickly more expensive. A 997.1 tends to go for $49.4 thousand, and this is approximately $10,000 more than a 996.2. The 997.2 is another significant step up. Perhaps this is the best modern 911. You get the option to go for a PDK, but still have that old school hydraulic steering feel. Clearly the market values these characteristics. Prices are on par with the 991.1 from 2012 and 2013. The price jump between the 991.1 and the .2 is a lot bigger. The .2s go for a premium of $28,000. They're a lot more expensive. What do you think? Is this price difference justified? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Personally, I'm not sure I would pay up the difference. The price gap is namely as large as the one between the 991.2 and 992. But we can find more extremities in this segment. Prices go up to roughly $220,000. Yet, if you're in the fortunate group of people who are in the market for a 992, I have good news for you. Prices have been falling. But before we look at the prices, we need to talk about what drives them. Of course, Economics 101 taught us that it is supply and demand, or to be more precise, the balance between the two of them. We're currently seeing a drop in supply, but on a standalone basis, this isn't a reliable indication that prices will go up. During the second part of the pandemic price surge, we saw, for example, that supply increased considerably while prices were still rising. After all, if demand rises quicker than supply, the scarcity level in the market increases, resulting in stronger prices. Now it's not so easy to capture this scarcity level in one single metric, but I found that the advertised time does a decent job. The advertised time measures how long, on average, a car is advertised for sale. If this time goes down, the market is getting hotter, something that eventually might lead to price increases. We saw this during the pandemic. The opposite of course applies if the advertised times are increasing. Cars are spending more and more time on dealer lots, which typically leads to price reductions. Let's figure out what's the current state of the 911 Carrera market. Over here we have the advertised time split by the different generations. We can see that the cars indeed were selling quicker and quicker in the first year of the pandemic. I think we all know what happened to prices in this period. Mid-2020 was a big turning point. The scarcity level in the market started to decrease slowly, and this started a round of price decreases in the beginning of 2022. Moreover, that has been the prevailing picture. Price trends for 911s were decreasing. But look at the most recent quarter. Not all the data is yet in, but it seems to be so that the advertised days dropped significantly in Q2. It is clearly the largest drop that we've seen in a few years. And this indicates that the scarcity level in the market increased. A 997 was, for example, advertised for sale for an average of 68 days, but decreased to 53 days. A logical explanation for all of this is of course the spring effect. Data to calculate these trends is very kindly provided by Autotempest. Autotempest conveniently pulls listings from a bunch of different websites into one place, so that you can browse through all of them. Check out the links in the description to find the 911s for sale right now. Now translating all of this back to the prices, this should mean that prices strengthened a bit. That is, prices should have been decreasing at a slightly lower pace. This is indeed mostly the case, as we'll see soon. But that's not all. No, there are extremely large differences between the generations. So without further ado, Let's have a look at the price trends. We start with the generation for which prices dropped the most, the 992. Over here we have the price trends for the base, S and GTS models. Prices of course increased after the introduction, topped in the summer of 2022 and have been decreasing ever since. Compared to last year, base models lost 9% or $12,000 and S models 14% or $22,000. The drop in the base market is quite decent when you compare it to other cars, but the one in the S market is on the high side. Now you're probably wondering why I didn't mention the GTS. That's because in May 2022, so this point over here, there were only 5 cars listed for sale. And this means that the point isn't representative of the market and that the drop what you see here is an overestimation. Now looking at the most recent 3 months, we can see that the cars are depreciating at a slower pace. And this is also what we saw earlier in the advertised times, right? Moreover, this is a pattern that we are seeing in many markets. But let's make these aggregate numbers a bit more concrete. They tell only part of the story. A car from model year 2022 will of course lose more than a car from model year 2020. So let's figure out what the difference is. Over here we have the price trends broken down by model year. And for the sake of simplicity, I only included the base and the S models. Starting with the base model, so the blue, orange and green lines, we can see that 2020 cars lost 10%, 2021 cars 12% and 2022 cars 14%. And in monetary terms, this means that a 2020 model lost approximately $10,000 less than a 2022 model. Depending on your own appetite for depreciation, this is of course key information. Do you really want to spend more and lose more just to get a car that's 2 years younger and had 10,000 miles less? Moving on to the S models, we can see that 2020 cars lost 13% and 2021 and 2022 cars 14%. But the 2022 number is an underestimation due to the high number of new cars that were pushed to the market at the end of 2022. Now in general, these patterns match of course with what you could reasonably expect. New cars lose more than old cars. That's not a groundbreaking finding. But we can also see that 2022 and in some cases 2021 cars are priced lower than in December 2020. Yet, on a like-for-like basis, these cars aren't cheaper. For example, a 2022 base model had on average 1,300 miles at the end of 2020, while they currently have almost 15,000 miles. So you pay almost the same, but get a car with more miles. Now if your budget doesn't stretch to a 992, I have some good news for you. The situation in terms of depreciation gets better from this point onwards. The further we go back in time, the less the cars dropped. Some even lost nothing. And that's quite remarkable in the current climate. For the 991.2, unfortunately, this only applies to a limited extent. Over here we have the price trends for the 991.2 cars. We can see that they all follow approximately the same pattern. Compared to last year, base models lost 10% or $10,000 and S models 15% or $18,000. GTS prices in May 2020 are a bit of an outlier due to various reasons, but the decrease during the last 9 months amounts to 10.2%. So on a year-on-year basis, the decrease would amount to approximately 14%. All of these numbers are not shockingly low. In fact, in relative terms, they are approximately the same as in the 992 market. In monetary terms, they are of course a lot lower. Looking at the most recent development, we can see that the decrease rates dropped for all models. And this is a big deviation from the trend. As we saw in the beginning of the video, the scarcity level in the market increased a bit. All of these patterns are similar to the ones in the 991.1 market, but the price drops are lower over there. Have a look at the following graph. Base models lost 7.8%, SS 9.8% and GTS 6.4%. So on average, this is clearly lower than in the 991.2 and 992 market. These cars are much older after all. In monetary terms, all the drops are below $10,000. Now the development during the last 3 months is the same as in the 991.2 market. loss rates decreased and price trends flattened. Again, this is in line with the development in the advertised times that we saw in the beginning of the video. So what about the 997? According to some, it's the best 911 ever made. Can depreciation rates be even lower than in the 991.1 market? The short answer is no. They're approximately the same for most models. Over here we have the trends for the .1 and .2 split by the base and the S models. And this reveals that 997.1 base models lost only 3.5%. This is an extremely low rate and mainly the result of the price increase during the last 3 months. 997.1 S's are down by 13.8% and 997.2 S's by 8%. The price trend for the 997.2 base model is fairly unreliable due to the small market size. You can see that the confidence intervals widened quite a bit in the most recent period, so I think it makes more sense to compute the average and apply that to this trend. Looking at the most recent months, we can see again that prices strengthened. Depreciation rates dropped or in some cases even turned into appreciation rates. Compared to other markets, also the 996 has been strong, especially, yet again, the base model. Have a look at the following graph. 996.1 base models only lost 3.5% during the last year, and this is 11% for the .2 and 6.5% for the 2 S's. Now before everybody goes crazy in the comment section, yes, this only includes the 4 S's. It's just not displayed here. If I add the drivetrain split to the data, also the .1 generation will be split, and this results in unreliable trends due to the small market sizes. So just trust me, these are only 4 S's. In any case, if we look at the most recent developments, we can see again decreases in the decrease rates, and this of course is in line with the advertised times. Now before we wrap up and conclude, there's still one more thing I would like to show you about the 996 market. They deserve, just as the 992, a little bit of extra attention. The price strength for the base models is really exceptional. Over here we have the price developments for the 996.1 base model, broken down by the mileage categories. The green line, for example, shows the prices for cars with 65 to 84,000 miles. And as you can see, with exception of the cars with the lowest mileage, prices have been exceptionally stable since August 2021. I don't think I covered many other cars on the channel with such a stable price development. Historical developments are of course no guarantee for future developments, but if you are looking for a Porsche with minimal value loss, this is something that I would consider. Let's wrap up and conclude after all of that data. 911 Carreras are dropping at different rates, and this is key information if you're, for example, doubting between a 991.1 or a 991.2. The new cars lost up to 14% during last year, while the older ones could have lost nothing or only a few percentages. The cutoff seems to be at the 991.2 generation. Those, and the 992 of course, lost more than 10%, while the older cars, so the ones from the 991.1 and backwards, lost less than 10%. There's a clear difference in the year-on-year price development. This was already part of the previous market update 3 months ago, but is now confirmed. However, while year-on-year price decreases might be different, there's one thing that all price trends have in common. The advertised times decreased in the most recent period, resulting in an increased scarcity level. And this in turn decreased the loss rates and in some cases even pushed prices up. The 911 market is not the only market where this is happening. If you're a subscriber, you know that it's basically happening everywhere. We can then also make a strong case that this is just a seasonal effect. Therefore, if you're buying right now, it makes sense to assume that the cars will depreciate along the prevailing trend. It's unlikely that we're looking at some market bottom here. And with that we arrived at the end of this video. Now if you enjoy this data-driven way of analyzing car markets but would have liked to see the analysis for a different car, head over to my channel. Over there you will find many market analyses for a large variety of cars. Can't find the car you're looking for? Let me know the name of the car for which you would like to see an analysis by commenting it down below in the comment section. Once there are enough requests for a certain car, I'll make a video about it. As always, thank you for watching and I hope to see you next week for a new video.